Whether you're B2B or B2C, and pretty much whatever you're selling, the fastest growing companies in your market will have a really clear idea of who they're selling to and how to position what they sell to resonate with that target customer. And when you're offering matches exactly what your audience wants, that's called product market fit. And product market fit makes your marketing so much easier. In fact, every single one of the fastest growing clients we've worked with at Exposure Ninja has had exceptional product market fit. This is also one of the main reasons that some products and businesses go viral, whilst only half of all startups actually survive their first 5 years in business. But to get product market fit, obviously we need to understand who the customer is in the first place. We need buyer personas. And creating a buyer persona is a vital marketing exercise, however mature your business is. And in fact, your buyer persona is probably going to change and evolve over time, so it's something to revisit every couple of years or so. So today we are going to design your buyer persona. We're going to design 5 elements of your buyer persona, and we're going to do it in 2 stages. In the first part, we're going to look at what your buyer persona needs to include, so the information that you need to gather. The second stage, we're going to talk about how to actually collect this information from your potential customers. No good just knowing what you've got to collect, we actually need to know how to collect it as well. By the end, you will have buyer persona or buyer personas for your business. Let's do this. To the buyer persona mobile. Okay, so what are these 5 areas of your buyer persona that you need to identify? Well, the first is demographics. Yeah, I know, this is the standard bit that everyone defaults to. It's things like age, gender, location, marital relationship status, that type of stuff. But understanding the demographics of your perfect buyer is actually really useful, because this is stuff that might influence, for example, the imagery that you use on your website. It might influence the features or the benefits that you talk about in your product. Tim, let's look at some examples. Okay, Tim. Now I'm going to show you a couple of different product categories for sale from Google. So same manufacturer, same brand, but a couple of different product categories to illustrate how demographics can influence the buyer persona. So first group that we're going to look at is their Nest security products. So this is stuff like smart doorbells, security cameras, that type of stuff. So we start off by looking at some product shots, pretty straightforward. Have a look at the people though. This is people with pets, they're sitting around. These are fairly young people, but not super young people. People who are going to be buying stuff from delivery drivers. People who are going to be putting up bats and cobwebs at Halloween. So this is probably not your teenager in a New York City apartment, right? We can see the sorts of houses that they're selling to. So these are this is suburban America. We've got typical middle-aged folk. And then of course we've got parents. And in fact, parents are really the category that is best represented in all of Google's security product imagery. We're selling to parents, either pet parents or child parents. Now let's contrast this. Same brand, Google, but this is their Stadia product line. So this is gaming stuff. Let's have a look at the demographics they're selling to here. Very different. This is younger people hunched over their laptops. This is young people crammed onto a sofa, eating takeaway pizza, hunched over their controllers. This is people who look like they're in their bedroom. Again, younger people playing on their games.
Wow, Tim, profound. Google is selling home security and gaming products to different audiences.
Yeah, I know, it's obvious, right? But is it as obvious to your target customers who you are selling to on your website based on the images and the people that are visible on the site? And by the way, if you don't know who you're selling to, stay tuned, because at the end of the video, I'm going to show you how to get all of this info in the first place. The next info that you'll want to include in your buyer persona is their towards motivations. These are the things that they're making a purchase to get closer towards. For example, some people value independence and freedom. Some people value individuality. Most of us have some sort of driver to be healthy and happy and sexy, and we will make purchase decisions to help us get towards those. But what you really want to do is identify which of these your potential customers are buying your product or buying what you're selling to achieve, and how can you tap into that towards motivation to make the sale. We're going to look at a couple of different rowing machines here, and what I want us to look at is how they're selling into different towards motivations. So the first one that we're going to look at is Hydro, and in particular I want us to look at the towards motivations that they're selling. What are the actual benefits that they're really selling of this product? Well, we can see that there's some pictures of outdoor space. People are happy, people are enjoying this. It doesn't look particularly strenuous. There's personal free one-on-one coaching. So there's a bit of a relationship thing there. We see that the testimonial references encouragement to keep going, that feeling of accomplishment. We can see that it's talking about the completeness of the workout and the fact that this uses all the major muscle groups. We can see aspirational product shots and beautiful scenery designed to replicate the on-the-water rowing experience. This looks high-end, it looks motivating, and it looks like you're working out with people. Let's contrast this with Averon. Now, Averon has a slightly different proposition, still a connected rowing machine, but actually, this is all about games. It's exciting games, streaming, and it ends boring workouts. You see, the images used here, it's much higher intensity, it's people battling against each other and playing games. You can see the colors used in the background. This is designed to be fun and interesting and stimulating. The testimonials that they use, they talk about fun, intensity. The pictures basically look like computer games. In fact, if we compare this site to something like Elgato, which sells gaming hardware, we see that actually a lot of the look and feel is pretty similar, right? We've got similar sorts of colors going on, we've got similar sort of layout. It's almost like Averon is trying to trigger the gamer and say, you're home, this is your place, this is the rowing machine for you. So Hydro is selling motivation and instructors, Averon is selling fun. So that's the towards motivations, the thing that you want to sell into, and you need to understand what your audience is motivated to reach and to strive towards. But as Einstein or someone said, for every towards motivation, there's an away from motivation. And we also want to sell against the things that our audience is scared of. So we recently did a digital marketing teardown for The Ordinary, which is a beauty brand that has completely taken the beauty industry by storm. Relatively well-entrenched industry where lots of established players all kind of fought it out in the same way. The Ordinary has kind of taken a scythe to all of this and stabbed them in the back. And how they've done it is by selling into their customers away from motivations.
Tim, what do you mean?
The Ordinary is selling against marketing hype in its products. For me, it's perfectly summed up by this line on their About Us page. Our offering is pioneering, not in the familiar technology it uses, but in its honesty and integrity. The Ordinary's positioning is all skincare basically uses the same ingredients. These ingredients do things like plump up your skin cells. So if you want plumper skin, you want hyaluronic acid. This is a scientific, if you want plumper skin, you basically need to use hyaluronic acid. And any product that delivers this includes hyaluronic acid. So we're actually going to just sell you a moisturizer with hyaluronic acid, and we're going to make it look all scientific and sciencey. So what they've done is they've looked at the beauty market and they've said, we think a lot of these buyers are skeptical about the marketing hype going on in this space. What we're going to do is sell against that hype. So you see products like this, for example, which are presented in a very factual kind of scientific way. This isn't dressed up to look like it's got marketing hype at all. It's priced low as if it's a raw ingredient because that's kind of how they're positioning it. And then look at the wording, the copy here. There is no hype whatsoever. Advanced treatment to support dermal water density for intense lightweight hydration and comfort. Right, this sounds like a product that's being sold to a doctor because they kind of want you to feel like it sort of is, like you're a well-educated customer. They've shown you the inside information on the beauty industry. They've taught you that there are these ingredients which work in a similar way all the time. We've standardized this. We know what works. We just put it in a bottle and we sell it to you for a relatively low price so that you can buy through our transparent way. Like they say, these are familiar technologies. They're almost trying to dismiss the ingredients. There's nothing magic here. This is just standardized ingredients that everyone is using. We're just going to sell them to you in a straightforward and transparent way, and in doing so make all of our competitors look like they're trying to pull a fast one. It's genius, and it resonates really well with their target audience. Now, since lockdown, we've also seen the rise of retail trading in stocks and shares, and this has largely been driven by companies like Trading 212 and Robinhood. And they have also sold against the away from motivations, the fears of their buyer persona, namely that trading in stocks and shares is sort of mysterious and expensive and elitist. You have to go through a broker and you really have to know what you're doing. Well, Trading 212 and this new breed of apps actually sells against this. Look at this headline. Commission-free investing for everyone. They make it really simple. It looks like a game. It's really simple. Look, there's a big fat buy button that you can click. That's implied simplicity. Look at how the copy on this page is designed to remove fear. It's designed to make it seem really easy. Buy stocks instantly. Choose your favorite company. How much to invest. Get your shares in seconds. Simple as that. Now, whatever you think about the dangers to the financial system based on all of this, you can't argue that this approach has been incredibly successful. And the reason it's been incredibly successful is because Trading 212 and all these companies understand the away from motivations that they're selling into. How do you revolutionize a market like this? You look at why people don't buy and you sell to that. Now, this actually reminds me of one of the last times I did buyer persona research myself. For one of our clients, they were selling a DIY product, and through doing the buyer persona customer research, which I'll talk you through in a couple of minutes, we identified that the people who'd bought this product, their perfect customer, actually had a lot of self-consciousness about their own DIY skills. So they bought this product despite feeling a little bit unsure as to whether they were actually going to be able to install it. So one of the changes that we made to their marketing was to emphasize the simplicity and try to remove some of the DIY fear that these customers had. So not only could we try and increase the conversion rate from the traffic coming to their website, but we could also go up against competitors who weren't trying to offset this fear, and we knew that we could take market share from them. And also, I mean, I don't want to get too meta, but this is exactly what Exposure Ninja does, right? We're a digital marketing agency, and a lot of our clients have been burnt by agencies previously, and this makes them quite fearful. So we sell to this away from motivation of being scared of the agency that you work with. A lot of businesses, they don't know where to turn. So we share a lot of information, these videos, podcasts, our books, our blog, about everything that we learn. This builds up loads of trust and credibility. And then when a business uses this information to get results for themselves, they then think, well, okay, these ninjas probably aren't too bad. So they come and inquire about being a client. So just like that, you need to understand what your audience is scared of and how do you help them avoid that. That's stuff that you want to put in your buyer persona. Next thing to include in your buyer persona is your customers' online habits. You need to know if they're spending lots of time on social, which channels are they using? If they're visiting websites, what sorts of sites and which specific sites? This is particularly important if you are not your target customer. We see it a lot with a marketing manager who's just gone down the TikTok rabbit hole and they're spending 27 hours a day on TikTok. So they decide that they're going to take the brand that they're working for on TikTok because it's absolutely sick. The trouble is their 75-year-old target customer base isn't quite there yet and actually spends their time on completely different websites. Well, that's great if the target audience is there or is going to be there very soon. But if they're not, then you might be spending a whole bunch of time building visibility on a platform that actually your target audience isn't even there. Yes, of course, they might be there one day in the future, but if they're all spending their time on LinkedIn right now, well, that might be where you need to spend the majority of your time and keep half an eye on the future. Okay, final thing to include in your buyer persona is a quote library. 2 categories of quotes that you might want to include. Now, the reason you want to include quotes is, remember what we said at the start, you want these buyers to feel as real as possible. And for some people, this is really when everything kind of gets crystallized and combined into one statement. So a quote like, I bought this rowing machine because I love gaming and I've always found it really difficult to motivate myself to work out. That kind of summarizes everything that's happened above, if you like. So either including real or composite quotes from your perfect buyer in this section allows you to distill everything and just turn it into a few statements that you can then reference when you're building your marketing to make sure that this is going to resonate with that buyer. The other type of quote that you might want to include are things that you or your sales team or your marketing have said to your perfect buyers that you know really resonates. This way you're keeping a record of those key arguments, those key differentiators which you know work, so that you can use them again and again in your marketing material. If you're enjoying this video, the team here at Exposure Ninja have a free service for you which you might find really useful. Basically, what we do is we analyze your website, your digital marketing, and your competitors, and then we map you out a personalized digital marketing strategy that you can follow over the next 6 to 12 months to significantly increase the volume of leads and sales that you get through your website. It's awesome. And it's also completely free of charge as well. All you need to do is go to exposureninja.com/review, request a free review of your site. What we do is we have a look at all of this stuff. We film a video showing you this stuff on the screen so that you can then go and implement it. Go to exposureninja.com/review to request your free website and marketing review today. Okay, so those are the 5 things that you want to include in your buyer persona. Your demographics, towards motivations, away from motivations, their online habits, and the quote library. But how do you actually get this stuff? How do you compile it in the first place? So there's a few different ways to do this, and the different options that you choose will be based on what you're selling and who you're selling to. But remember, the goal is always to build as complete a picture as possible of your perfect customer. We really want to be able to imagine this customer sat next to us and have a sort of virtual conversation with them in our heads, right? So one way to do this, to build up an accurate picture of what your customers sort of look like, is to actually just do a good old bit of Facebook stalking. Put them into Facebook and just find out, get to know them a bit. If you worked in a shop all day and you saw your customers coming in, you would begin to build up a bit of a picture about what the perfect customer looked like for you. But with the internet and the fact that we're kind of separated by a computer screen, these buyers can often just turn into stats on analytics or stats on social or names on social. What we want to do is we actually want to humanize these people again. So by going onto Facebook or by going onto different social channels and finding these people, you can start to build up a bit of a picture about what they like, where do they spend their time, how do they talk with friends. Even if they're not talking about your business, that's okay. Remember, we just want to be able to visualize these people. Okay, taking this a level deeper, if we want to start understanding how people are talking about either our products or about products in this space, we can check Reddit. And Reddit is a really good place to kind of tap into people's conversations. Let's say, for example, that we were going to be selling a connected rower and that we wanted to understand how people were talking in this space. Well, we might just go to Reddit, we might search one of our competitors, Hydro. And what we can do here is we can start to understand how all of these people are talking. We can understand the language, the level of expertise they have, the different arguments that they make for and against different products. This helps us to understand where we're going to position ourselves against what's already out there. Another great source of intel is Quora. You can ask pretty much any question in Quora. For example, here I've just searched for are home security cameras worth it? And what we've got here is we've got 22 answers of people giving their opinions. Now, just like Reddit, we can understand what the language is that people are using here. We can also understand what their selection criteria, their towards and away from motivations are too. If we wanted to go in a little bit more detail, we could then start finding out more information about who these people actually were and whether they matched our target customer. Another great source of intel for your buyer personas is your sales team. So you need to go and talk to them. Yeah, I know, but just this once. Your sales team knows what makes a good customer. They know the characteristics, they know the things that they need to say to get that person to buy. So we'll often look for call recordings or email threads that we can use to pick out some of the language, but also just talk to them to get their feedback. When someone gets in touch, how do you know that that person is going to be a good potential buyer or not? And you can try and turn some of this intuitive knowledge into clear information in your buyer persona. You can also get a ton of information on this stuff from analytics, both Google Analytics on your website, but also your social analytics. So Google Analytics will show you stuff like the devices that your potential customers, your visitors are using, the time of days that they're visiting the site, their locations, their genders. It will show you some interest stuff, but to be honest, most of the time that stuff is total rubbish, so I wouldn't necessarily trust that. Social analytics, meanwhile, will tell you the best times to post, so when your audiences are most online. They'll show you the same sort of demographic stuff as well. And by doing some of the stalking that we talked about earlier, you can start to figure out some of the other pages and profiles that your potential customers are most interested in to build up a bit more of a picture about these people. But by far my favorite way to collect buyer persona information is by actually talking to customers and potential customers. And I've done quite a bit of this myself on behalf of our clients over the years. Now, it's a good idea to assign some budget and to allocate some time for this sort of stuff because it is quite time consuming, but the results can be really valuable. And you want to assign budget because you may need to bribe people to be involved. Most people aren't just up for just having a conversation with you unless they can see that there's something in it for them. So we'd often contact people on behalf of our clients and say, hey, we're an outside firm, we're doing some work with this brand to understand their buyers. We'd love to ask you for 15 minutes of your time, and in return, we'll give you a £15 Amazon voucher. This voucher is yours no matter what you tell us. So this isn't bribes to give us the answers that we want. This is just a thank you for your time. And we'd find that then they're much more open to giving us the information that we're really after. I'll give you some tips on this exercise based on my own experience. The first one is if you want to gauge someone's underlying motivations, their towards motivations, it's no good saying, why did you buy that thing? Did you think it would make you feel more sexy? Because they often won't be able to answer that, and even if they could, they wouldn't answer it honestly to you. It's too forward. Instead, you can use the 5 whys, or you can ask them really open-ended questions like, hey, what made you choose that particular model? They'll then start giving you their selection criteria, which you can then use to deduce their underlying motivations. Okay, so why is that important to you? All right, and why did you do that? You can also ask them questions like, if you had to recommend this to a friend, what would you say? Because then they'll pick out the things that are most important to them, and they'll put themselves in their friend's position, which often case is their position, and they'll say, oh, well, I really like this thing because it's really easy to use, or it's great for people who can't see so well, or whatever it is. Another question that I found really useful in this customer call research was to ask people to rate the different benefits or USPs of a product. So in one example, we're working with a puzzle magazine, and what we wanted to identify was which of the different features of the magazine their customers most valued, so that we could then emphasize those in the marketing and on the website. So we'd say things like, how important is it that the puzzles are challenging? How important is it that you can win prizes? How important is it that the puzzles keep your brain active? How important is the price point of the magazine? How important is it that it's got a nice thick cover and good quality paper? And what we'd often find is that the things that we thought were important actually weren't that important to the potential customer. So it meant that we could either change our focus in the marketing or even change our focus with the business. For example, if they're spending a whole bunch of money on thick paper stock, but actually the customers don't even notice or care, or maybe there's a cost saving there for them. My final tip with customer call research is if you're going to ask for people's age, do it at the end of the call when you've already got the rapport built up. All right, so the one remaining question is how many buyer personas do we actually need to create? Some businesses will only need to do one. For example, if we think about sportswear, Sweaty Betty is a female-focused athletics brand, and they are selling to one buyer persona. She's called Kate. Everything in a Sweaty Betty store is designed to resonate with Kate. Whereas if we think about Nike, well, Nike's selling to a whole bunch of different potential buyers. They're selling to people who just wear athleisure wear on a daily basis. They're selling to performance athletes who want to squeeze out the last 4% out of their marathon times. And they need to have different buyer personas for each of these. And in order to do this, they have to create sub-brands which each have their own buyer personas. So as a general rule, you can start to get a feel for how many buyer personas you're going to need once you start doing this exercise. I would start doing the exercise first, and then once you've collected all the info, you can start to split it up into different buyer personas. For example, I was personally doing this for a client a few years ago, and they sent me a whole bunch of customers. I just picked 5 at random, and I start calling them. And as I'm talking to them, I'm basically having the same conversation with the same people every time. I think 3 of the 5 were even called Jackie. So we even had a name for our buyer persona, which was Jackie, because they're basically exactly the same person. And as we went through the exercise, we're just getting the same stuff over and over again. In that situation, the customer group is so narrow that you only really need to do one buyer persona. But if you find that you've got people falling into a couple of different buckets, then maybe you have 2 buyer personas, or 3 or 4 or whatever. But in general, I'd try and keep your number of buyer personas as few as possible, but no fewer. Now, once you've done your buyer persona work, you'll probably want to do some keyword research, because keyword research can be a great way of identifying the specific keywords and phrases that your customers are using to find you. We've actually recorded a video here which takes you through a keyword research process that you can use whatever you sell. And it's a great way of fleshing out some of the information here and identifying the language that your perfect customers are using when you can put this in your buyer personas.